All righty. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about esports and bringing esports and STEAM and social emotional learning skills to your schools. There are tons of lifelong skills that can be learned through esports. And I hope you all learn a little bit something today from this presentation. Thank you for joining. My name is Rich. I am Director of Academic Esports here at Mastery Coding. But I am very happy to introduce Coach Ben, our newest full-time addition to Mastery Coding and Pathway Esports.
Hey, Rich. Thank you for introducing. So my name's Ben. I am the head coach at Pathway Esports, but I also write some of the curriculum that we use here. And I'm really excited to be able to join you. My background is as an educator and as a coach. I came from the classroom having taught mathematics and PE, and then transitioned into full-time coaching with games such as Hearthstone, League of Legends, Fortnite, and Magic the Gathering. So I'm really excited to be able to be a part of the Pathway family and help students find their academic success in esports.
Huge welcome. Thank you, Ben. Very much appreciated. Now, first off, we're going to begin in case anybody is unaware. Esports, just by definition, is competitive video gaming. And this definition is important to understand because some people just understand video gaming as being something mindless or something that people sit on a couch and veg out for hours and hours on end. Now, that can be video gaming, but that's certainly not esports, and that's certainly not competitive video gaming. And that's certainly not where you learn many of the skills and can be provided the benefits of gaming through that type of play. So through esports, right, we're more talking about productive video gaming. It's about gaming with a purpose in mind to get better, to improve, to learn new skills yourself, and to work as a team with another group of individuals who are equally as motivated. Now, through competitive video gaming, we can find a lot of numerous benefits that will go into more detail further in this presentation, but just as sort of a warmer here, we have esports being able to build engagement for many schools. And this could be a struggle. We also can find esports being able to teach new skills, and not only skills within the game, but we're talking about SEL skills, right? Social emotional learning. And we have all the social emotional learning that you would get from traditional sports, right? Communication, teamwork, competitive etiquette, all that stuff is still in esports, but there's even more, right? There's the hard skills that you get with maintaining your hardware, maintaining your software, being able to keep all this stuff up to date and run and work with these computers on a daily basis, right? We also see esports being able to provide community and competition for students who would otherwise be disenfranchised or not interested in some of the traditional sports that are available on campus. And last, but certainly not least, we see esports being an avenue towards numerous college scholarships. And speaking of, we have a bit of a story.
So when I was a teacher, I always had students saying that they loved playing video games and that it was so much fun for them. And for some of them, this was really just kind of an outlet to blow off steam, to have some fun. It was a hobby. But for a couple of them, they were really strong enough to become competitive, to go somewhere with this and to potentially make a living off of it. But this was always really hard to convey to parents. I remember I had one boy who, he was really an exceptional player. Now, I'd already been coaching for years at this point, so I'd seen thousands of students go from being decent to being great, but not quite having what it took to make it. I thought that this young man had the chance to make it. But when I talked to him about it, he said, oh, my parents will never support it. They always tell me to get off for dinner. They say I can't even play video games at home on the weekends. It's just a waste of time. I should really be focusing on my academics, and this isn't worth it. So I knew I had a little bit of a mission here. So during our next family conference day, the mother came in, we were chatting for a while, And as soon as I started talking about esports, I kind of saw her eyes glaze over. She wasn't interested. She wasn't really involved in the conversation anymore. And I was trying to tell her like he was really an exceptional player, was amazing. It's just like if he was really good at baseball or some other sport. And it just wasn't going across. And I said one word, and I'll never forget this moment because her eyes lit up. Said, this could really be a potential for a scholarship for him. And all of a sudden, it was like an immediate U-turn on her end. She said, oh, wait, really? Scholarship? He could go to school with this? This could help him get into a better school. Okay, what do I need to support him? Should I set up a schedule for when he plays and when he practices? What's new gear does he need to get? What do I need to do to be able to participate and assist him with this? And it was amazing, this kind of immediate pivot. And I told her one little story that helped this happen, which was about my little brother who actually got into school on a Rocket League scholarship, and it was almost a full ride. And it was amazing that by playing this video game about rocket cars, he was able to make tens of thousands of dollars in a college and be able to pay for his own education. So what we can do in the world of esports is ever expanding, and the scholarship opportunities keep blossoming.
That's right. Yeah, it's honestly amazing. And what we're seeing is gaming becoming a gateway to lots of future opportunities. Ben mentioned the college scholarships. There are now over 200 universities offering esports scholarships, but we can also see gaming as just elevating academic performance for where the students currently are participating, right? With minimum required GPAs to participate. You know, many students will attend and do better in their classes because they want to be a part of an esports program on their campus. We also see many students in esports going into careers in computer science. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. If you spend a majority of your time on these computers, you kind of want to go into a career in that field or related to that field. And so you could see through this graph on the right here that 50% of students involved in esports are looking into the field of STEM education. They're trying to join STEM, whether that be through science, technology, engineering, or math. And that's amazing. We also can see that gaming is a gateway to community and engagement on campuses. And this is especially the case for, as I mentioned, students who would otherwise be disenfranchised from traditional sports. And there's this great statistic that 80% of esports students hadn't participated in any other extracurricular activities previous to joining esports. It really reaches a group of students that you wouldn't otherwise be able to engage on your campus. There's also something I like to say, and this goes towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, but when you're in the game, everyone's the same. Everyone's the same when they're in the game, right? Doesn't matter how tall you are, short you are, the color of your skin, how much you weigh, and in some cases, if you have different disabilities.
I had one student this last year that during our first week, his mother reached out to me. You know, as a teacher, when a mother reaches out to you in the first week, it could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. This one, I was very thankful. I was very happy that she reached out, and it was a good thing. She said, hey, I just wanted to let you know, my son, he has a couple of disabilities, and I want to see how we can work together to make this a successful program for him. He's 11, and he just came back and is currently recovering from his 41st surgery. I was blown away. I mean, my education is as a special ed teacher, but 41 surgeries by 11, to me, mind-boggling. He had a couple of physical disformations that made it difficult for him to interact with people in person. He often felt very self-conscious, as well as having a couple of physical impairments that made it difficult for him to participate in any type of traditional athletic. So when he was given the opportunity to participate in an esport, where he had an avatar in the game that nobody knew what he looked like and nobody treated him any differently, and B, he still had full control of his hands, so he had no actual disadvantage when it came to the gameplay. This felt like his opportunity to create friendships and to participate in something at a competitive level, which was a completely new experience for him. So her and I worked together, and he was even able to join a team with that team, he was able to compete against other teams and join our tournament system, which had prizes, and he was so excited by it. And by the end of the program, his mother reached out to me and said that this was the highlight of his year. He was so excited he got to participate, and that he really felt like he was a part of the program, and he felt like he had made new friends that he would stay in touch with. And this was an eye-opening experience for him in the world of competitive.
Yeah, those stories are always some of the most heartwarming. And along some of these same veins, also of importance, non-toxicity is a foundational pillar in all of our programs, right? We put lectures about positive mental attitude, non-toxic gaming, supporting your teammates, caring for your mental health. These are all forefront in our programs. And it's really important to teach students these kinds of skills when they're young, especially if gaming is going to be something that becomes a lifelong hobby, skill, career, right? It's important to set the right expectations and have the right examples at the very beginning.
This last year in one of our tournaments for Fortnite, we had a student who, he wasn't the strongest and he hadn't put in the most work throughout the year to really improve, but he was excited by the program and by the ability to connect with others. And so during one of our tournament days, he was doing something that we call an edit course, which was a solo activity. And he was struggling a little bit. At the start, his team was cheering him on and he got really good morale from that. And they kept going throughout, but he started to feel a little bit disappointed. He started to lose some of his positive mental attitude, and you could feel him slipping a little bit. He started slowing down, started making some mistakes. And there was this moment where a new student, somebody who wasn't on his team, somebody who was in reality his opponent, said, "Hey, you got this, Gravy. Like, you keep going, don't give up." And all of a sudden we saw the chat get filled by all these students who had been watching him because we were broadcasting. All these students started saying, "You got this, Gravy, like, go Gravy." Even his coach chimed in and was like, "You got this, man." And it was amazing to see not just his team coming and supporting him, but even his opponents showing this amazing sportsmanship to cheer him on and to help him do his best.
Yeah, that sort of feeling when there's a whole bunch of people like rooting for you and like cheering you on, there's like very little that can compare to that, especially when you're competing. Cool. Okay, so next up, we have some statistics for you. In case you haven't been following the world of esports, it is absolutely massive. In this graph here, you can see that there are more viewerships in esports than all other traditional sports, aside from the NFL and the Super Bowl. Absolutely massive as well. But you could see that esports is absolutely growing and challenges a lot of the other traditional sports that are huge in our society.
And one of the things that has become somewhat special about esports is that they're not just about the player and this entertainment factor of watching players compete against each other. They've started delving into new fields. They started even hosting concerts. Of course, we would assume that that wouldn't be an immediate hit. So our largest physical concert, our largest in-person concert was held by Rod Stewart in Rio de Janeiro in 1994 and had 3.5 million. I mean, just looking at this picture, it's crazy to think of how many people were there. And an esport, a video game, could never approach that level of some type of concurrent viewers. But then Fortnite said, "Hey, let's give this a try. Let's give this a go." And the first concert they ever did had over 15 million viewers. And this was a marshmallow concert. They said, "Hey, well, that's pretty impressive. We got almost 5 times the viewership of the largest concert ever held in history. Let's try again." The next one, they made not just a passive experience, they made it an active experience. You actually had to play the concert, not an instrument, but there were things you were doing that you were keeping up with that led to parts of the concert having continuity. And this one hit over 27 million concurrent viewers. This was absolutely astronomical. We hit crazy numbers. And to this day, Fortnite keeps doing their own in-game concerts and breaking record after record after record. The thing that's amazing about this is just seeing how esports isn't staying specifically in this one field of we compete against each other. They're trying to branch out and see what else can we do? How can we bring this digital world together? Now,
Really
one
is a
aspect,
medium. It's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah. One aspect of that we can see on the next slide is really amazing, because in our traditional athletics, we have a pretty set path. You start in middle school so that you can get into your high school JV team. From your high school JV team, you want to make it onto the varsity team. From there, you're going to have a recruiter look at you and see if you can make it to a college team. And after college, you hopefully get recruited. That's when you start your career. That's when you start actually making money and being able to see how you can fare against other professionals. In esports, it's not quite the same. In something like Fortnite, the average professional player is only 16 years old. That means we can't wait until college to help them prepare to be professionals. We need to start as early as possible. And that's why in Pathway, we start in middle school. We start even with upper elementary students, help them prepare for the middle school experience so that by the time they get to high school, they're ready to begin getting that competitive experience. To me, the wildest part of all of this is the youngest signed player to any type of esport was only 8 years old. He signed a $33,000 yearly contract and was able to start making his career before he even got to upper elementary school. I mean, this is a third grader. So when we look at Pathway Esports, what we're trying to do is start training these students, not just on being great players from a young age, but learning how to be good people too. Because when you're able to interact in a positive manner in any type of competitive or professional environment, that sets you apart from the other people who aren't able to, people who maybe haven't brushed up on their soft skills to the same degree. And then when the players start getting a little bit older, what we see in a lot of traditional sports is they just retire, and often there's a lot of complications there. But what we see in esports is they actually retire and begin working in orbital roles. Myself, I moved into coaching after I left my competitive experience. And we see tons and tons of roles that these players are able to transition to and then support other players who are just getting into the field. And we have this whole new amazing thing about all of these roles that we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Nice little teaser. Before we get to there, let's answer the question for why we're even talking about esports in the first place. Well, it really is a pathway. There's no pun intended for Pathway Esports. We truly do see esports as being a pathway to further education and careers. We found esports to be one of the ways that we can meet students where they are most passionate, which is gaming. And we can open their eyes to the massive industry and numerous career opportunities by taking them behind the scenes and awakening their curiosity. A little bit of background on myself. I have a background in game development, and I knew that I wanted to go into that from a very young age, from a passion for playing these games and a passion for esports. And although I continued playing it, I also began learning how games were developed. And I think by opening the students' eyes to a little bit behind the magic curtain, we can also awaken their curiosity for some of these different careers. For instance, here we can see a very popular or famous video gaming character. And although generally we only see the sort of image on the left where we're rendering the mesh of the character, you could physically see the triangles that are being rendered, there are actually tons of hidden shapes that affect how this character interacts with the world. And this is called collision detection, where game developers use hitboxes to efficiently calculate what is touching what character is touching where in the game world. And by understanding these hitboxes, hurtboxes, and any of these sort of concepts, deeper concepts about how games are made, it can actually improve the gamers' not only understanding of the game, but also it can improve their play by allowing them to make more informed decisions. And at the end of the day, esports is a lot of making decisions quickly and being able to enact on them. And that brings us to esports competition.
In esports, when you compete, it's not just about the physical side of things, which is what we often find in traditional sports. How high can you jump? How fast can you run? How hard can you hit a ball? And these are still very impressive feats, but they're somewhat restrictive. when we look on the complete other side of this, we have a game like chess, which is entirely cognitive. You don't need to have any physical capability whatsoever. You could even play online and pretty much just hit a button, which once again isn't to say this isn't difficult, because that is the most difficult game in the world. It's all cognitive. Esports lies somewhere in the middle of these two. We have the physical attributes of timing and speed, but you only really need the coordination of your hands. You don't need to have full body. And then it's got this cognitive stimulation that's somewhat unique that you'll find pretty much any gamer, somebody who's serious about video games, or even somebody who's already competing in esports, they are incredible at figuring out systems. That's one of the reasons that you see a lot of them go into CS or any type of coding major. Systems, they just feel very natural. Because in esports, the games break down into two major components, and we call these micro and macro. Your micro, these are the things that you physically control, usually your player. In your macro, these are the aspects of the game that are out of your control, but you need to understand and be able to use to your advantage. So esports is this very interesting combination of these two, where you'll never find one player who's just amazing mechanically, but doesn't have the cognitive side. And similarly, you won't find somebody who's amazing cognitively and doesn't have the physical side, except unless they have full control of their hands. I had one boy who was in a team that I worked with last year that he was actually flown out to the national championship, and he was in a wheelchair. He only had control of his hands, but that was enough because he had still full control there that he could compete even at the highest levels because he had such high cognition. He was able to understand the game to such a high degree that he was able to make up for it. And he had this place that he felt that he could call home.
Absolutely. And in fact, one could argue that in esports, it's even more complex than something like traditional sports or chess, because whereas in chess, where you have, it's a turn-based game, you have time to evaluate the position, determine your decisions, and then react, right? That's chess. Whereas in esports, you might be evaluating and making equally complex decisions, but you have a fraction of a second, right? Or a fraction of the time to actually enact that in the game. Take something like Rocket League, where you're literally rocket powered. Things are moving very fast. And the position of your car, if it's like even finely tuned in a little bit direction, it changes the trajectory of the ball and the geometric patterns on how it bounces. And you have to make these calculations and decisions in a fraction of a second, right? Now, one thing to understand with esports competition and gameplay is that ability is not fixed or predetermined. And a lot of gamers or players might have a sort of stuck mindset when they initially join, because, you know, a lot of games have some sort of ranking system. You are diamond, you are this rank, so on and so forth. But that's not really true. Instead, a player's average performance isn't a set number. It's realistically, it's on something like a bell curve that you see here, where some days you play a little bit worse, some days you play a little bit better. And sometimes it's just a matter of which side of the bed you wake up in the morning, but there are lots of other ways that you can improve your average play.
And when we talk about improving, there's really the two aspects, the physical and the cognitive. When it comes to physical, it's actually very similar to a traditional athletic. We use regular and repeated practice. We call these drills, much as you would in something like basketball. We have students practice this drill over and over until they hit something like 95% plus performance. This way they know that they're able to get their mechanics down, and then they can start focusing a lot more on the gameplay or the macro so that they can figure out how they can improve. Now, one of the things we focus so much on in Pathway Esports is how students or how anybody can take care of their own body. So we always have them stretch before they play. We help them learn, okay, what's a healthy diet? Because should I really be living on things like G Fuel and Doritos? Probably not. We help them make sure that they have a healthy sleep pattern, because too many times I've seen students say, oh, I woke up at 8 a.m. and I just gamed until 3 in the morning. I'm like, whoa, that's not healthy. We need to have set hours that we can play, but we also need to take care of our body by working out, by eating, by taking breaks from the computer. When it comes to the cognitive side, we spend a lot of time helping them be able to analyze their own play. Things like what we call VOD reviews are when they look at their own gameplay, and they do this with a coach who can point out the little things that they can improve on, but also help them pat themselves on the back for the things that they did amazingly on. So this is how we help them improve their decision-making skills, is if we try to give this constructive criticism in the moment, it's almost impossible to really receive that and use it. Your blood is pumping too much. So we make sure that they stay calm and collected in the match, because they know later on, that's when we'll look back. That's when we'll do any type of review. That's when we'll think about how we can improve.
That's right. And all of these sort of factors go into building a growth mindset for the students, right? Even if they begin to plateau in sort of their physical capabilities, by understanding, oh, I can improve my mental, by understanding, oh, I can improve my communication, and sort of all these different factors can go into increasing your average play or your average performance. And sort of one of the most important ways to improve your average performance is by removing unforced errors.
Unforced errors is the same thing in esports as it is in traditional sports. When you make a mistake that your opponent didn't force you to, makes sense. Now, when we look at the highest level of play or pro players, they're not amazing because they did a backflip right before they scored a goal. It's not these fancy moves that set them apart. You're not going to see the Harlem Globetrotters be able to take on the Clippers. They're just not at the same level. What you're going to see is the strongest players, the professionals, they're the most consistent. The ones who are not just doing these crazy things, but being able to do something 95% of the time, 99% of the time without messing up. And so what we do with our players is we run them through these drills. We help them with their mentality by keeping this positive mental attitude. They're able to think well about themselves and approach the game with a new mindset every day, saying, I'm here to improve. I'm here to have fun. I'm not going to stress about things. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm playing consistently.
That's right. And if you or your school is at all interested in building consistent and successful esports teams, well, you've come to the right place. Pathway Esports has built a one-stop solution for forming a team, running a team, and providing those sort of academic career opportunities, lessons, and sort of skills that students can take throughout the rest of their lives. And in fact, our Pathway Esports toolkit is constantly being updated and added. We're adding new resources. And for the upcoming new year, very happy to announce 2 new additions to the Pathway Esports toolkit. Number 1, a whole new course being added to the toolkit, the Career Explorations course in esports that we'll get it a little bit more in depth into in just a moment. And the second edition is the Mastery Esports League, which will be structured and regular competition for any schools in Pathway Esports. Now, for the Career Wheel course and STEAM and esports, we already know and have talked about the numerous different orbital careers and opportunities in the esports ecosystem, because although 1% of players might go on to be a pro, there are many other careers in this industry that students can go into and have a passion for. Right. And so we're happy to announce our new course, middle school elective course, Esports Career Exploration, where students can begin exploring and getting a hands-on, behind-the-scene look at some of this industry's biggest careers, like players, coaches, broadcasting, software developers, event managers, and even event managers, agents, lawyers, and player advocates. These types of learnings are not just important for the future careers and the skills, but also for further understanding of the industry pitfalls and traps. For instance, we're looking at the player advocate, agents, and lawyers, because contracts are an especially hot topic with professional players being so young.
There was this one player who he was so incredibly happy to be able to sign, be able to have this weekly paycheck with an organization mean, that really is the dream of a player, because otherwise you're just relying on tournament earnings. And he got this offer from one of the biggest organizations in the world called FaZe. And immediately he leapt at it, signed it, took it, was ecstatic. But once he actually looked through this contract, he realized that what looked like a gift was actually a curse. And they were taking 80% of his profits. And while he got this weekly paycheck, it wasn't anywhere near what he used to be making. This is somebody who would have benefited from a course like this. Even if he didn't have his own lawyer or player advocate, he could have learned about how to go through a contract, what to look for, and how to keep himself educated and prepared.
That's absolutely right. And so next up, we also have the Mastery Esports League, which is our regular competition for any schools with Pathway Esports that are ready to compete. And it is important, to spend some time developing your skills, building a team, sort of training a little bit before you just jump into the ring.
And that's where our Pathway Esports toolkit comes in. It teaches you, how do you form a team? How do you help them improve? How do you help them with team camaraderie? Because when it boils down to it, we approach this league the way that you would see a travel team in a traditional athletic. This isn't the type of club league where a couple of people who've never met would just hang out and group up. This is for once they've already gone through the toolkit, they've understood a lot of the fundamentals of the game. They've been able to work together. They've had time to practice. And now they're ready for this travel team where they get to compete against other schools and really take it to the next level.
That's absolutely right. And with that, we've reached the end of our presentation today. Thank you very much, and we appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about our programs and how esports can further build SEL and STEAM skills. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you are even a little bit interested in bringing esports to your schools. We are a little bit over time, but we'll open it up here for some Q&A. I hope you've enjoyed hearing Ben and I nerd out about this stuff a little bit.
It was so hard not to go an extra half hour.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it. Is there anything that we could fill in a little bit more on? Anything you guys have questions about?
Our district hosted a competition for grades 1 to 6. What does training look like for elementary students?
So I've worked with students ranging in age from 6 to about 50, and it's a pretty big range. So it's a lot of fun to work with individuals along that track. With younger kids, it really has to be fun because they have a much shorter attention span. So it needs to be short kind of lectures or instruction periods followed by gameplay where they can actually utilize it themselves. Now, my favorite way to do this is to actually, while you're teaching them something, have them practice it because they need this kind of idle activity. So whenever I'm training somebody who's younger, I want to show them the direct mechanic I want them to practice, have them practice it. And while they're practicing, that's when I start going over the concepts behind it. Because it's amazing how used to overstimulation kids are nowadays. And if they're doing something, they can usually, not everybody, but usually listen and embed a lot of this information at the same time. So really play-based education is what I found is the most useful when it comes to the younger elementary grades.
That's a good answer. Thank you, Ben. We also had some questions about grades and age ranges. Generally, our Pathway Esports toolkit is aimed towards the middle and high school area, though we do have camps and clubs available for elementary school. I'll also, I see Katie asking a little bit about how to get some admins involved. I will drop some further resources into the chat here. In case sharing any of these flyers helps out at all.
And to take a step further too, the things that I found, because when I was a teacher, I started an esports program at my school. I actually helped them build their own computer lab. And what I found helped the most with getting an admin on board was being able to A, go over scholarship opportunities, because as soon as parents hear that, they get excited. But B, it's really like not very expensive. And going over that with the admin is exciting, because if you already have a tech lab for something like graphic design or computer classes, you can often use that for esports. And then all you need is to find a staff person who will run it. And what I've seen across most schools that I've worked with is educators who start these clubs or start these programs, they're often starting volunteer work. And then as it gets bigger and as it starts bringing its own revenue, then they start getting a paid position for it. So to convince an admin, you show them what the long-term benefits are with college experience. But then you also go into the fact that there's actually very little price to starting this program.
I've also dropped into chat the academic esports white paper that we put together here at Mastery Coding. It has a lot of good statistics, resources, researches, studies that we've put together about the benefits of esports. Thank you, guys. All righty. With that, thank you all very much. I hope you have a great day, and we hope to see you in the future participating in any of our competitions. Thank you, guys.
See you, everybody.